So guys, we are here now. Let's create our project. All right, sales info will be the name of our project, and let's put it as a Maven project. For me, I'm using Java 17. So now let's start adding our dependencies. As always, we need the Spring Batch. We need also JPA. In our case, we are going to use MySQL. We need also Spring integration, because this course is Spring Batch and Spring Batch integration. We will need also Spring Kafka, okay? I would like to use Spring Cloud Stream with Kafka or RabbitMQ, but let's just keep it simple. So now we add Spring for Apache Kafka. We need also Lombok, okay? So this is what we need in order to create our project. Now let me create, and I will come back as soon as it's already open. So now we have here our project, okay, as you can see. So what we're gonna do, maybe we have to add some more dependencies, like for example the dependency of Spring Batch integration, okay? So this is the Spring Batch integration dependency. This is what we are going to do. We are going to create a manager, okay, component and a worker component, and they are going to communicate with Kafka, okay, using Kafka. We have our project here. Now let's start creating our batch application. So the first thing that we are going to do here, let's create a package, okay? Let's call it by DTO. Before that, let's just create our directory here. I will copy and paste the file that we are going to read, okay? So this is the file that we are going to read. It's sales info. So in order to map these lines into a Java object, we need to create a class. Let's just call it by sales info DTO, right? So let's just use the Lombok at data, okay? And now let's just create the fields, right? Okay, let's just private, for example, string. The first field was product. So here we have our sales info DTO, and now let's create another package. Let's just call it by job, and we are going to have the first thing we're gonna be sales info job, okay, the manager. So as it's a configuration class, let's just set it as configuration. And let's use the enable batch processing of the Spring Batch, and also enable batch integration, which is the one of Spring Batch integration. Okay, I'm going to use require hours constructor because I like to inject my beans through constructor. So what we need now, the first thing that we need here in order to create our sales info manager is to create the manager itself. So it's what we are doing now. We are going to need the Spring class called, okay, in this case gonna be a bean called remote chunking manager step builder factory. We need this one. This class is provided by Spring Batch integration, remote chunking manager step builder factory. Let's start building our job, okay? So if you are familiar with Spring Batch, now we are using Spring Batch, the latest version, okay, with Spring Boot 3 framework 6 in this example. So the job, the constructor of a job has changed, okay? So let's just call it by sales manager job, okay? And return a new job builder, okay? This job builder as always need a name. it will need also a job repository. So we can just set it the job repository. It will need also a step. Let's just call it by sales info step. Okay. Step manager, maybe like this. It needs job repository. And now we start our job by calling our step manager. And yeah, that's all. That's all. We could use also runner incremented ID or something like that, like this. Okay, new runner increment ID. But let's just use it like this. So it's complaining because we don't have here a step, okay, because it cannot auto write a step. If you remember, Spring Batch has a job. Here we have a step. Step has a reader, processor, which is optional, and a writer. Okay, so let's before start creating other thing, let's try to create here our step. I know that we don't have yet the reader, but we are going to see it later. Let's call it by the same name. Okay, this is our step. And yeah, our step gonna be like this. As we can see here, this remote chunking manager step builder factory that get the name of step. Let's call it by our step will be the type of chunk oriented. Okay, so if you don't understand what is the difference between the chunk oriented and tasklet oriented, so you can check. We have a video here. Okay, we talked already about this topic. So it's going to have a reader. If you remember in our presentation, the manager has only the reader. So we need a reader. So now let's create our flat file item reader. So we are going to map it into sales info DTO. Let's call it by sales reader. All right. It's gonna return new builder. And yeah, let's say that we are going to use sales info DTO, which is our DTO. It's going to need a resource. Okay, so we are going to use, for this particular use case, we are going to use a class path resources. Okay, and let's try to read. Okay, if you remember, our file is here on the data because I want to share this code with you. Data and the name of the file. Okay, so sales info.csv. So this is like this. If we check here, okay, it's finding very nice IntelliJ. And now we just need to complete, and it's delimited, okay, because our CSV is delimited. We also provide here the delimiter, which is a comma. The names, we need to provide the names of like the names of let's call it the token, okay, the columns. The first one is seller, the first one is product, the second is seller, and so on. So let's provide it. And now let's skip one line. Okay, let me just put here a comment. Okay, because we are skipping the header of this file. Now we set it by our target class, okay, which is sales info DTO.class. Okay, and yeah, that's it. So now we have our sales reader. We can use it here. So for our step, we have already the reader. Now this is the important part, guys, because here is where the magic start happening. Okay, now that we have the reader, now we need to provide our outbound channel, which gonna send the lines that we are going to read into Kafka. Okay, and also we are going to create, or we are going to provide a way to receive, okay, from Kafka. It will be clear later, but For now, let's create it by, for example, here. The first thing that we need to do is to create, for example, here, as we are using Kafka, okay, we are going to inject here the Kafka template, where our key going to be a string. Let's just put it like a string, and the value will be the sales info DTO, okay? Yeah, so now that we have our Kafka template, we can start using the components of the components that the Spring Batch integration offers us to provide a way to send the items that we are going to read into Kafka and receive them from Kafka. So we have here the reader. Now let's create the outbound flow. So let's just create it using the Spring integration flow. Why? Because we are sending, okay, to Kafka. So in that order, let's create here, let's use the Spring integration Kafka producer message handler is equal new, yes, it's Kafka producer message handler. It will need also the key and the value. I'm using Java 17, okay, that's why I'm using here the var, okay, the type inference. And the next thing that we need to do here is to provide a topic, okay, and let's just new, I think it's literal expression, yeah. So let's say it's like sales. We are going to send into Kafka chunk requests, okay. This will be the name of our topic, okay, chunk requests. So doing that, I think it's okay. We can use more. If you take a look here, you can explore more. We can use partition, we can use everything, but this tutorial can be very complicated. So let's just using like this, okay. And yeah, let's create here. So it will need here, if we see, it will need a message channel, okay. If you don't understand what is message channel, don't worry, it's also very simple, okay. We are going to use here direct channel, and let's call it by outbound channel. Yes, this is our direct channel, so it should be a bin. Good. So if you take a look, a channel that invokes a single subscriber for each sent message, okay. So we are going to use this channel as a message channel, okay. So as you can see here, let's just use outbound channel, and then we need, for example, let's just log, okay. In my case, I like to put it just, for example, warning, just to it's not a warning, but just to, how can I say it to you, just to differentiate between other logs, okay, because we need to see what we are doing here. So let's put here handle. What we are going to handle here, guys, yes, we are going to handle the producer, oops, not here, producer message handle. And yes, that's all. Let's put it get. So this is the way that we create, okay, we can use Spring Cloud Stream, which is more functional like, okay, and very simple, but for this case, let's just create it like this, because this is the way that we are going to send messages into Kafka. For now, let's just leave it like this, and here we need to set the outbound channel, okay. We have here, okay, already our outbound channel, so we set it into our step, okay. So let's just put here outbound channel, okay. So we are reading, okay, the file and sending the records into the outbound channel, okay. And the outbound channel gonna use the Kafka producer to send the messages, the lines of the file, which is our messages, into Kafka. So this is the way that you create the outbound channel. So as we can see, instead of having only the outbound channel, we need also the inbound channel, because what's going to happen is, let me just, for example, show you guys here. So we are going, the manager will send, okay, the requests to workers, okay? The workers later will reply what they have done, okay? So let's go back here and let's create a mean, okay? A mean to receive records that our workers will send to us. So for that, we just use here like inbound channel. Yeah, this time to receive data, we are not going to use direct channel. We are going to use a queue channel, just like this. Then let's just annotate it. So how we are going to receive the data? Okay, this is the biggest problem here. So just the way that we did here, okay, we can do also in order to receive the data. But instead of doing that, let's just use here another approach, which is it's the same approach. Okay, let's call it inbound flow, but like this flow. It's the same approach, but it's differ a little bit. Okay, so now let's just integration flow that from, yes, from, I think, yeah, here we can use the consumer factory. Okay, the key will be as well string, and the value will be also sales info. Okay, and before explaining, so we are going to take it from Kafka that message driven channel adapter, which is going to receive a consumer factory and the topic. Okay, so we are sending the chunk the sales chunk requests, okay, into this topic. Now we are going to receive here in the sales chunk response. Okay, just call it response, chunk response. Okay, or maybe let's just leave it like chunk replies. Yes, maybe it's more convenient to set it like that. And then we're gonna log also, logging level warning. It's not a warning, just to differ from other logs. Okay, it's not a good it's not the best practices to do it like that, but let's just to be more visual. Okay, so what we have here, okay, in this case, so this is integration flow. We are creating inbound flow. Okay, what is the consumer factory? Okay, the strategy to produce a consumer instance. Okay, so we are going to create a consumer instance. So we are consuming, as you can see here, from Kafka, okay, from this topic, right? So it's very easy to create. Spring ecosystem has very different kind of approaches to create Kafka producers and consumers. You can use Spring Cloud Stream, which is amazing one, very simple. But for now, we are using Spring batch integration, so we create here the consumer. Now that we have here the consumer, let me just see, yeah. Now that we have here the inbound channel, okay, let's use it here in our inbound channel. Let's just use here, for example, allow start if complete. It's going to be boolean that true. Yes, let's just leave it like that. Okay, let's keep it simple because we don't want to make this video so long. So this is nice. We have our manager. Okay, our manager. Let's go back here. our manager is responsible from reading from a source and send it into Kafka and receive from Kafka, okay? So in that order, let me just create here, for example, at, I think, yeah, profile manager, because we are going to have two different components of this job. One is for manager, another for the workers, okay? So now that we have our manager here, maybe we need to set up very quickly the Spring data source and so on, okay? If you are confused where you can find this the schema, just take a look on other videos. We already explained how to do that. So I'm assuming that you have Docker, okay, installed on your machine. I'm gonna share with you guys my Docker Compose, and we are going to run Kafka in order to see it working. So now that we have here everything, so let me just share with you guys my Docker Compose. My Docker Compose only has the Zookeeper, okay, have the Kafka image. So Zookeeper, Kafka, and AKHQ. So maybe the only thing here new is the AKHQ, which is the user interface. Very nice to see your Kafka topics and all your Kafka environment. The Docker is running on my machine, as you can see. So if we take a look here, we can see the AKHQ running, okay? So the other thing that we need to do before running this application is the creation of a mean to trigger, okay, the application. So in that case, let's just here in the manager create a cron. So the first thing that we have to keep in mind is it will just run with the profile of a, okay, manager. So what we are going to have here in this component is the scheduler, okay? So it will need, let's just use it here, for example, at required hours constructor, okay, in order to inject our beans. So let's just final job, we need to inject our job here. Yes, the name of our job, sales manager, okay. It will pick, okay, because we have only one job, so it could just pick without giving the correct name, but let's just put it like this, okay. Then we need also to inject job launcher, because we are going to launch our job using a scheduler, okay. It should be job launcher. So this is the way that we are injecting, okay, using the Lombok for those that don't understand it. And now let's just lead here, like create here perform, okay, method which will trigger our job. So the job needs also the job parameters, okay. Then we call the job launcher that we are going to run our sales manager with the job params, okay. And so it throws exception, and we need here to add our schedule, okay. It's going to be a cron, and let's just put it like, okay, it should run every second. So this is very nice, okay. So this is the way that we create our manager, okay. Remember, this should only be for manager. So let's try the first approach, okay. Let's try just running the manager, because the file is already here. Let's see what it can do. Now let me just run the application. Before running, I'm going to set here the profile in my IntelliJ manager, and let's run the application. set Lombok. All right, it's complaining because it's saying that no group ID was found for our consumer. Well done. In that order, what we are going to do here is very simple. As we have here this application property, this is for general application. We will need also one application property for the manager and the worker. Application, let's call it manager dot property. So, and there, nice. This is the place that we need to use the Spring Kafka, okay, consumer configuration for the group, okay. If you understand what is group ID for Kafka, okay, consumer groups, Kafka, this is a very nice topic that we are going to cover, but you need a consumer group, okay, in order to avoid, for example, two instances of the same application consuming the same message. We need to enable scheduling, okay, because we have here a scheduler, okay, and we need to trigger, we need to fire our cron, okay, by not just by creating the component but also enabling the scheduling. So